Welcome back to Talking High Performance with Belle. And today I want to start with something that I hear all the time. I'll talk to someone or I'll sit next to them or they'll send me a message and they say some version of the same sentence, which is, I need to make some changes. And when I ask them what that actually looks like, the answer is almost never small. It's a new morning routine, a new way of eating, a new system for the house, a new friendship group, needing to change jobs. And it usually starts on a Monday. And it's the overhaul. And what we're taught is that when we need to change something, we are needing to change everything. We need a completely new plan, a new routine, a new you. And we see this with New Year's resolutions. We see this when people go on fads. And we see this all the time. And, it sometimes happens after the school holidays. And in the past, I've done this myself, but there's a problem in approaching a situation that way. And it's not the one that people expect. When we think about a big change, it asks for a lot of energy. And the person reaching for the change isn't coming from a place where they have a lot of energy, usually, which is why they want the change. And so when we do that, what happens is we end up reaching for something that is just too big. So the whole thing gets built on energy that you've borrowed from somewhere. And it starts really good for a few days or a few weeks because you've got this energy and you're really ready to do it. And you start to feel like yourself. But then what happens is it could be a child gets sick or a deadline lands at work or you have a bad night's sleep and all of it falls over. And the energy that took you through the first period doesn't take you through the next. And this is the part that's super important. You don't say the plan was too big. What people often say to themselves is, I'm the problem. I can't stick to anything. I can never continue with motivation. I always get overwhelmed. I always do this. I'm not good enough. And all these things start to play out. And if you think about it, it's a really expensive conclusion to draw about yourself from a plan that was never survivable in the first place because you'd set it up to be too big. And when I realized this for myself, it was a complete game changer. And the size of the shift is not the point. What really gets us moving is the honesty of the shift. So, what I mean when I say honest is I don't mean small for the sake of small. I'm not telling you to lower the bar and to call it growth. An honest shift is one that you would still make on your worst day, not your best day. So, not the version of you who slept well, whose kids didn't, frustrate them in the morning, who had a clear diary and all this time, who nobody needed anything from before 9 in the morning. The real one, the tired you, the stretched you, the halfway through something else you, the one where something pops up and you can still get it done you. Because most people design change from a version of themselves that turns up about 4 or 5 times a year. So, and this is not sustainable. So if I give you mine, like bedtime in our house isn't always a calm hour. So everyone's tired, and that includes me. And, my son's quite often stirring up the twins, with a joke or with a mask to scare them or telling them which spider's going to land on their bed. And it always sits just before bedtime when everybody is, at their lowest energy point. They could be crying from the little ones because their brothers annoyed them or whatever it is. And him thinking he's hilarious. But in the meantime, all we want is our kids to go to bed. And for a long time, my answer to that would be, I just need to be absolutely patient, no raising your voice. Everything, you're going to have a perfect night. And there'll be a whole new version of me starting tomorrow where I'm not going to get frustrated at my kids. And I'd hold it for a couple of days. And then bedtime would land on the back of a hard day. And I'd hear my own voice getting louder, getting sharper. And I'd be right back where I started, like adding it to my list of things that I just wasn't that good at. And it's still a work in progress. And from the outside, it looks like a woman with high standards. Yet underneath, I'm asking someone, myself and the kids, with nothing left to give, become a different person at exactly the hour that I have the least to give. Right? And it's not sustainable. So what actually holds is much smaller. It could just be a breath before I turn around. It could just be pausing and not reacting straight away. And that could be it. So it's not a philosophy on parenting. It's just a breath, a pause, a reset in a moment and in 1 hour of the day that I know is already going to be a challenging one at times. And I still get it wrong all the time, but I get it wrong less and I come back faster, which matters more than what people think. Because my kids get a mum who's present, rather than one performing a patience act that she hasn't got, which is super important. Now, the pattern underneath all of this is an uncomfortable one. And that's the part that's most confronting. The thing people call a small shift is almost always the thing they've been avoiding. Not because it's difficult, but because it's honest. We know it deep down. We know quite often the things we plan are not sustainable, but we keep going. And it's a conversation with ourselves that we're not having, or it's a boundary that we keep not setting. And then we complain when the outcome that happens is not what we want it to be. So it's all about one better action instead of 10 perfect plans. One small change, one small movement. And none of those require a different life. They require more of you in the life that you already have. And that's the sentence this entire episode is built on. You don't need a different life. You need more of you in the life that you already have. So the overhaul is often just avoidance wearing a productivity outfit. And don't get me wrong, I love productivity, but not when we're avoiding something. And it feels like action, and it feels, much more sophisticated than just doing the one small, tiny, honest thing. Because a new routine, it's exciting, but a hard conversation with ourselves is not. And if we want to move the needle, if we want to create change in our lives, it's these honest conversations with ourselves that we need to have. So this month, I'm giving you just one tool, and the same tool every week, because you don't need 11 new tools. You need one that you can actually reach for that's super, super easy. And it's called the Chilli shift, where you pause, you choose, and you reset. The pause is the interruption. It's the half second where you notice you're about to do the automatic thing that you don't want to do. The choose is the moment you realize another option is available, which is a lot better. So it's not a better person's option, it's your option. And the reset is what you do when you get it wrong, because you will. I do every day, everybody does. But the reset is coming back without punishing yourself for the trip. 3 words: pause, choose, reset. And you can run them on something small enough to be honest and truthful to you. So here's what I want you to do this week. I don't want you to build a plan. I want you to find one shift, one tiny shift, make it honest. And then ask yourself the question, where does this need chili? Where do I need to add a bit of spice to get moving in this area? Because most of us, we're not stuck. We're just running on autopilot with a life that we've absorbed rather than chosen. And then we're too tired to change it. And it's the smallest shift in our life that changes everything, for one reason only. And it's the one you'll still be making in 3 weeks' time, because it's small enough to manage even on the hard days. Even on the days where you don't feel like doing it. So the question I want to leave you with is this one. What is the smallest shift that you've been avoiding? Notice what comes up, avoiding. So not the smallest shift you haven't thought of, because you've thought about it and it's probably been there for months and you just haven't done anything, a tiny shift. When you lean into this, the first answer is quite often the safe one, so wait for the second, because that's where the true answer normally lies, below the surface. So just what is it that you've been avoiding? And then what can you do to move yourself forward in that area? Where can you apply the Chilli shift? Until next time, live a successful, purposeful, and fully charged life. Your coach, Belle.